Rome expels its kings and establishes the Republic. For nearly 5 centuries, this mixed constitution, combining monarchical, aristocratic, and democratic elements, will prove remarkably stable. Then, in barely 100 years, from the Gracchi to Augustus, it collapses into autocracy. This is the transition that haunted Machiavelli. This is the case study that validates Saylor's model. The Roman Republic didn't fall because of one bad emperor or one lost battle. It fell because its parameters drifted past a bifurcation point. Welcome to Module 5, Historical Applications. Let's watch a republic die, in slow motion, with equations. To model Rome, we need to estimate its initial conditions during the stable republic, say around 200 BCE. Wealth distribution W, moderate but rising. Rome had a substantial middle class of small farmers who formed the backbone of its citizen army, but conquest was already concentrating wealth among the senatorial elite. Social norms N, very high. Roman civic virtue, pietas, gravitas, dignitas, was legendary. Citizens genuinely believed in the republic. The cursus honorum, the ladder of offices, was respected. Term limits and collegiality constrained ambition. Legislative position L, moderately responsive. The Senate dominated, but tribunes could veto legislation, and the popular assemblies had real power. The system balanced elite and popular interests, imperfectly but functionally. Executive power E, deliberately constrained. Consuls served one-year terms. Dictators were appointed only in emergencies and resigned when the crisis passed. Cincinnatus became the model. Take power, save the state, return to the plow. Production capacity P, growing rapidly through conquest. Rome was absorbing the Mediterranean world, generating enormous wealth flows. This is a democratic equilibrium, not perfect, but stable. What pushed it out? The conquest of the Mediterranean changed Rome's parameters, slowly but inexorably. Alpha, the wealth accumulation rate, increased dramatically. Conquest brought slaves, land, and tribute. The rich got richer much faster than before. Latifundia, vast slave-worked estates, replaced small farms. Beta, the norm regeneration rate, declined. As Rome expanded, civic identity diluted. Soldiers owed loyalty to their generals, who paid them rather than to the republic. The old religion became hollow ritual. Greek philosophy introduced skepticism. Gamma, legislative responsiveness, fell as the Senate calcified. The same families dominated generation after generation. Reform became nearly impossible through normal channels. Tau, the delay parameter, shortened. Communications and transport improved. Political crises that once took years to develop now erupted in months. Notice, these aren't sudden shocks, they're gradual drifts over a century. The Republic looked fine. The institutions still functioned, elections still happened, but the basin of attraction was shrinking. The Gracchi brothers mark the beginning of the end, not because they were villains, but because they revealed how fragile the system had become. 133 BCE, Tiberius Gracchus, a tribune, proposes land reform. Redistribute public land to landless citizens. Restore the yeoman farmer class. Strengthen the army's recruiting base. This is exactly what the model prescribes. Reduce W to stabilize the system. But the Senate blocks him. Tiberius bypasses normal procedure, seeks re-election as tribune, and is murdered by senators. A decade later, his brother Gaius tries again. More reforms, more obstruction, more violence. Gaius dies too. What happened? In our model, the system approached a bifurcation. Normal political channels, high gamma, could no longer process the conflict generated by high W. The democratic equilibrium was destabilizing. The Gracchi weren't the disease. They were the symptom, the fever that signals infection. After the Gracchi, a new political species emerges, the warlord. Marius reforms the army, making soldiers dependent on their generals for land grants after service. Military loyalty shifts from state to commander. Sulla marches on Rome, twice. He becomes dictator, kills thousands of political enemies, then retires. The precedent is set. Constitutional norms can be violated if you have enough legions. Pompey conquers the East and returns with an army personally loyal to him. Caesar conquers Gaul and does the same. In our model, E is rising uncontrollably. Executive power that was once constrained by norms now operates outside them. Each warlord proves that force trumps law. Meanwhile, N continues falling. Each violation of norms makes the next violation easier. Each civil war kills more of the old elite and their traditions. The feedback loop is vicious and accelerating. The basin of attraction for the Republican equilibrium has nearly vanished. Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon in 49 BCE. Civil war follows. Caesar wins. As dictator, Caesar concentrates power unprecedented in Roman history. He's assassinated in 44 BCE by senators hoping to restore the Republic. They fail. Caesar's death triggers another civil war. His heir, Octavian, eventually defeats all rivals and becomes Augustus, the first emperor. Here's the key insight. By 44 BCE, the Republican equilibrium no longer existed. It had been destroyed by parameter drift, not by Caesar. The senators who killed him thought they were saving the Republic. But you can't return to an equilibrium that has vanished. This is what bifurcation means in practice. Before the critical point, the Republic could recover from shocks. After it, recovery was mathematically impossible. The assassin's daggers couldn't change the eigenvalues. How well does Saylor's model fit this history? The qualitative dynamics match remarkably well. Rising W from conquest and inequality, falling N as civic virtue eroded, declining gamma as the Senate ossified, rising E as warlords accumulated power. The feedback loops we derived, W drives C, drives down N, falling N enables higher E, all operated. The bifurcation interpretation explains why gradual change produced sudden collapse. The Republic looked stable until it wasn't. The transition from Gracchi to Augustus took barely a century. Fast for institutional change. The model also explains why restoration failed. Sulla tried to restore the Republic through dictatorship. The assassins tried through murder. Neither worked because the underlying parameters had changed. You can't legislate basin of attraction back into existence. What the model doesn't capture, specific personalities, military contingencies, the role of individual decisions. Caesar might have died in Gaul. Octavian might have lost at Actium. History has noise that no model predicts. But the structural dynamics, the forces pushing toward autocracy, those the model captures. What does Rome teach us about political economy? First, conquest and inequality are dangerous. Rising W destabilizes systems. Rome's very success, its conquests, generated the wealth concentration that destroyed its constitution. Second, norms matter more than laws. Rome had excellent constitutional design, but when N fell, the laws became unenforceable. A constitution is only as strong as the people's belief in it. Third, warning signs exist but get ignored. The Gracchi, Marius, Sulla, each was a signal that the system was stressed. Each was treated as an isolated problem rather than a systemic symptom. Fourth, timing matters. Early intervention might have saved the Republic. Land reform in 200 BCE, before the parameter drift accelerated, could have stabilized W. By the time of the Gracchi, reform required fighting the entrenched interests that had grown rich from inequality. Fifth, equilibria don't return on their own. After Augustus, Rome never restored the Republic. The autocratic equilibrium was self-reinforcing. It lasted 4 centuries in the West, longer in the East. These lessons apply beyond Rome. They're structural features of political economy that recur across cultures and centuries. The Roman Republic is the canonical example of democratic collapse. It's why Machiavelli wrote the discourses. It's why the American founders studied Latin. And Saylor's model lets us see it with new eyes, not as a morality tale about corruption and virtue, but as a dynamical system passing through a bifurcation. Next episode, we'll apply the same framework to a different transition, the French Revolution. Same model, different parameters, different trajectory. We'll see how a monarchy destabilizes and what emerges from the chaos. Your challenge? Think about other historical transitions you know. The fall of the Weimar Republic, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of apartheid in South Africa. Which ones look like bifurcations? What were the parameters drifting? Where were the warning signs? The model is a lens. Apply it to history and see what comes into focus. Next time, the French Revolution.